Shabbat Shalom. All right, let's not waste any time today. Welcome back to Classroom, everybody. All right, how many of you were enjoying the weather earlier this week? Beautiful. I got out there. It was so nice it was warm. It's kind of strange. You start off with like no sweater, and then you have to add a sweater, and then add a jacket. It's like, I love our seasons here in Canada. It's very unpredictable. We're always full of surprises. Today we're talking about seasons changing. All right, that's our subject. Seasons change, and this is part of our Moedim series. Everybody remember the Moedim? Yes, Moedim are the Lord's appointed times. Today it is a little bit more of a review for most of us. There might be some new information for a few of us as well. Okay, always good to review. Quick pop quiz. What happened on the fourth day of creation? Sun, moon, and stars. J, A plus, A plus. Sun, moon, and stars created on the fourth day. What was their purpose? Let's look at it. Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 to 15. God said, "Let there be lights," Ma'arot, "in the rakia of the sky to divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs, seasons, days, and years, and let them be for lights in the dome of the sky to give light to the earth." The word for seasons here in Hebrew that was used was Moedim. Okay? Appointed times or designated times. Okay? So when you look at this really quickly, you have the lights in the sky, day and night, those that govern it, the moon and the sun, all right? And they are there for signs and seasons, days and years. When I read this, it tells me it's got something to do with time, tracking time, right? On the fourth day, you see the sun, moon, and stars. They're in the dome, the rakia, the firmament, all right, over the earth. There has been a lot of NASA stuff going on the past couple of weeks, right?
Yeah,
the people that got stranded apparently in some place they say is out in outer space, and they came back, and lots of NASA stuff going on. And people are getting fascinated with what is out in the sky, up in the air, all right, outer space. And there's this understanding in science that we are spinning on a ball, a globe, and we're spinning and spinning really fast, okay? And we're hurling through space, right? And apparently, the sun is at the center of what we call our solar system, and you learned this in school, right? All right, so this is what we are taught in school, and it differs quite much from what I've read in the scriptures. Okay, when we look at biblical cosmology, we start to understand that the sun and moon and stars were placed in the rakia, the dome of the earth, and they were meant for our timekeeping here on earth. God had written a message in the sky for us to track time, and more importantly, to track His times, His Moedim, His seasons. Okay? If that were the case, let's look at it this way. Why is it important that we have to keep track of time using the sky? Well, those sun, moon, and stars are always there. They're always present. They're always guiding people through centuries and generations of people. They would look to the sky to determine times, season changes, days and hours of the day. All right? If you're stuck out at sea and you see the sun going up and down, you kind of get a better idea of what time of day it is, all right, or anywhere for that matter. Leviticus 23, verses 1 to 2. Yehovah said to Moshe, "Tell the people of Israel the designated times of Yehovah," the same word, Moedim. "The designated times of Yehovah, which you are to proclaim as holy convocations, are my designated times." Okay? This is what's written in Leviticus when we talk about the appointed times, if there's one passage in the scriptures that will hit all of them and give a very quick overview, it is Leviticus 23. Okay? The Moedim, it's typically looked at as 7 feasts. Of course, we know not all of them were feasts, per se. There were 3 main feasts. But when we talk about Moedim, again, these are Jehovah's designated or appointed times. How exactly do the sun, moon, and stars help us tell time? What are their purposes? What are they for? Well, the sun tells time. You've seen sundials before, right? And when is high noon? When it's directly above and you don't see too many shadows around, right? It's like directly above. That would be high noon. So everybody knows, well, it's about noontime in our area because there's no shadow cast around it. So sundials would be used to tell the hours of the day as the sun moved across the sky because it would cast shadows a certain way. Okay? The moon would tell the day. That's strange. I thought the moon was for the night. Well, the moon divides the day, divides the month into days, right? A moon cycle is 28 days, or actually more precisely 29.5 days. Okay? 29.5 days, the moon changes its pattern. Have you seen the crescent moon? And then the full moon? And then another crescent moon, a half moon even, and then an empty moon where there's no light at all. So every month there's a cycle and it repeats after 29.5 days. So it tells you what day of the month it is. The beginning of the month starts after that dark moon when there's no light in the sky. The first day is determined by a little sliver. It confirms the first day of the month. Okay? So you know that the 14th, 15th day of the month, between the 14th and 15th, you're falling on a full moon. Right? And then it goes empty again for the second half of the month. That's how the moon determines the days. And then the stars tell the month. Depending on where you're standing and the way that the stars are lined up in relation to everything else, you see people studying the constellations all the time. Even if you're not all about the stars, there are people all about their horoscopes, right? And they're also looking to the skies. And there's something about that. When the stars are set in a certain position, it tells you what time of year it is, so what month you're entering, okay? Where you see the sun and moon traveling out of certain star formations. So this is a precise thing that was set on the 4th day of creation. And we're still following the same time clock today. It has never changed. You look for the North Star in the sky, you will always see it. And it's always in the same spot. All the other stars around it are rotating above us, okay? And if you have ever sat camping, you know, it's hard to do in the city now. You go out camping, you lie down, you look at the sky, and you're like, whoa, I never knew there were so many stars. We don't get this in the big city, right? And if you sit there long enough, you start to see the sky spin. It's a beautiful thing. I used to love watching the sky. During the day, I'd watch the clouds go by. At night, I would love to see the stars. Science tells us that we are spinning. The Bible tells us that God set these things in the firmament of our earth. If you want to know, like, not that my opinion really matters, but for me and my understanding when I follow the scriptures, it points me to a stationary earth where we are immovable and everything else, the skies are moving above us. Okay? It's not my opinion, that's what my understanding is after having read through the scriptures. That's all. Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 to 2. Jehovah spoke to Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt. He said, "You want to begin your calendar with this month. It will be the first month of the year for you." Do you know when that first month was? What season it was? Abib? What's that in English? Spring. Alright, so the first month of the year for their calendar reckoning was during springtime. Not January 1st in the dead of winter, alright? Springtime. That was the beginning of the year that Jehovah told them, this is to be the beginning of the year for you. Why did he give them a specific time reckoning and a time stamp? Well, like I said, he already wrote those things up in the sky to help us keep track of the months, the days, as they pass, so that we can know his designated and appointed times. Are we following so far? What's your favorite season? Fall. Why fall? It's cold, the leaves, colors are changing. Not too hot, not too cold. You get to wear your favorite sweaters. Soup season. Yeah, there are different seasons, temperatures here in Canada. Rosh Chodesh is the head of the month. Rosh, head, Chodesh, the month. Rosh Chodesh. The Hebrew month, it's named Nisan. Okay? Nisan is the first month of the year on the Hebrew calendar. Okay? Also called Abib. Some confusion because Abib also means spring. Okay? But it's also another name for the month, first month of the year. The current year we are in, the Hebrew year is 5787. Abib, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. All right. We're going to be looking at the Hebrew calendar and the way that it works and the way we are to understand certain things. Okay? Quick question for everybody here. How many hours are there in a day? You're not sure? How many hours are there in a day? Typically, round it off.
Depends what you mean by day.
Depends what it means by day.
Sun,
Okay,
rise, sunset.
let's look at it this way. How many hours are there in a day for you? 24. Come on, you all follow a 24-hour clock. Don't lie to me. Right? We know there are 24 hours in what we consider a day, right? A day would consist of both night and day, morning, afternoon, evening, overnight, right? We consider all that to be a day, right? If a day is only daylight hours, then what is the night? Nothing? Not to be counted? I don't know. Let's look at it. The Hebrew calendar, okay, it begins in the evening at sunset and lasts 24 hours until sunset the next day, okay, the following sunset. The first day of the week, Yom Rishon, begins on the preceding sunset of Shabbat. All right, so tonight, when the sun goes down, then in the Hebrew calendar, you start to consider that to be the first day of the week. Moving from night to day. And the day ends when the sun goes down. Right? Do we all agree that the day ends when the sun goes down? Regardless of how you reckon a day, we all agree that the day ends when the sun goes down. Unless you are strictly following our current timekeeping. When does the day end when will March, what's the date today? 22? When will March 22 end? When? 11:59 p.m. today. And when will March 23 start? 12 o'clock midnight, right? Is the starting point for the next day. That's how we've reckoned it. All right? We're so okay with following a 24-hour fixed clock that has nothing to do with the sky. We just rely on our cell phone to tell us what time it is. And when there's a time change like there was a couple weeks ago, right? It kind of throws you off, right? How do you reckon time?
I don't. My body's not.
Right, let's look at this one. So you have there in the Hebrew reckoning, the day begins at sunset. Okay. The day begins at sunset, lasts 12 hours roughly till sunrise, and then you got roughly 12 hours of daytime depending on the season. Okay, and that would be the cycle of a day. prior to the Babylonian exile, the children of Israel divided the days into 6 parts. Okay, 6 parts. Alright, you have the nighttime watch, the first, second, and third watch during the night. And then you would have morning when the sun rises. You have the midday, the noonday, and then dusk or twilight, leading to sunset. An easy way to reckon the day. When I see the sun going up in the morning, it comes at a certain angle into our house, casting shadows a certain way. A nice, beautiful, warm glow comes into my kitchen window in the morning. By high noon, it's a brighter, whiter light that kind of just blinds everybody. And then in the evening, another beautiful setting sun. I also divide my day into 3 portions. All right, the early afternoon, the early morning, the midday, and then a time to start winding down before sunset. Right. The evening, nighttime hours were divided into 3 watches. A watch represented the time a guard was kept at the temple in Jerusalem. The morning daylight hours were divided into 3 parts, like we said, morning, noonday, and dusk or twilight. Each division of the day was about 4 hours in duration. So you add up all those hours and it gives you 24. A more detailed, if you don't like the graphs, the pictures, and this one gives you a linear sort of look. But it does show you more the approximate hours of the day when it's referred to. And why is this important? Sometimes when we read in Scripture, it does give time designations and it talks about different parts of the night. All right? It'll also talk about the 3rd hour of the day or the 6th hour of the day. And it can become very confusing, especially during the time of Yeshua's crucifixion. That's where I first remember seeing, what do you mean he died on the 3rd hour? Right? So, this is how we should understand when we read through the Scriptures, if we want to be able to relate to what it's writing about. We need to look at their perspective, the Hebraic perspective, in order to understand the Hebrew Scriptures. We can't be looking and reading the Scriptures with our worldly perspective today from the Gregorian calendar and the way that we've been conditioned to measure time or reckon days, and then try and take our worldview and place it into the Scriptures to make sense of it. It doesn't work. Okay? That's like trying to explain something in Tagalog to somebody that's only English speaking, and there's certain words that are captured in Tagalog that can be expressed in English appropriately. You can't always get that direct understanding because something gets lost in translation. Same thing when we read through the Bible, the Hebrew Scriptures. So much of what we read could get lost because we're trying to understand it with our worldview and perspective today. We talked about sundials, right? A sundial is a timekeeping device that indicates the time of the day by the position of the shadow of any object exposed to the sun's rays. Okay? This one here, a sundial in ancient Israel, it had 12 carved lines, and each one was indicating an hour of daylight. Here is what we're talking about. The first hour post-sunrise would correspond between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. See that? The 3rd hour post-sunrise would be between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. And the 9th hour post-sunrise would be later in the afternoon, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Ancient sons of Israel did not divide hours into minutes and minutes into seconds. That only happened after the Babylonian exile. You know, the Olympics would be very different without those seconds and milliseconds.
Yes.
Determining who actually runs the race, like wins that race. All right. But why are we so focused on how many seconds does it take to pop your popcorn in the microwave? You know, a few seconds can make a difference. So we think seconds are very important in our timekeeping. But according to God, it's like He didn't give us so much. We didn't have to be so terribly exacting all the time. But He used the the sun and the movement of the sun across the sky to just help us get through that period that is called a day. That was very exacting, the way the days moved. You know when sunset is, you know when the dark hits. We didn't have to be so worried about the minute and the second. Look at the anxiety that so many people are living with today. We try to be more productive. How long will it take for you to get all this done? All these minutes and seconds. How are we paid? Hourly. We're paid hourly, and you're late by 1 minute, it moves to the next 15.
Yeah. Yesterday I was driving and it just dawned on me in the morning that
How appropriate.
it is such a blessing. Because if I'm late, I would be so stressed and worried. It's like I have to call my boss, I'm late in 5 minutes, I have to run, go get ready and prepare. But in the morning now, I'm just relaxed. Whenever I can go out, I can go out. I have no boss to call that I'm going to be late.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow, this
Yeah.
is such a blessing.
Yeah.
So I didn't tell my boss that I was...
It's kind of snuck in there.
Yeah, right? It's like I'm stuck in traffic or anything in the morning.
We became slaves to this current timekeeping. In some sense we have. I don't think that was ever God's intention when He gave us a timepiece in the sky. Let's look a little bit more at Leviticus 23. We're looking at verse 5 to 8. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between sundown and complete darkness, see, it wasn't during these specific hours, all right? In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between sundown and complete darkness, that portion of night, comes Pesach for Yehovah. On the 15th day of the same month is the festival of Matzah. For 7 days you are to eat matzah. On the first day you are to have a holy convocation. Don't do any kind of ordinary work. Bring an offering made by fire to Yehovah for 7 days. On the 7th day is a holy convocation. Do not do any kind of work. Verses 9 to 11. Yehovah said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, after you enter the land I am giving you and harvest its ripe crops, you are to bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the Kohen. He is to wave the sheaf before Yehovah so that you will be accepted. The Kohen is to wave it on the day after the Shabbat, the weekly Shabbat. Okay, the 7th day of the week.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you go back one slide,
Yes.
please stay. So that 7 day you don't do not do any kind of ordinary. Is that only a command to the Israelites, or is it still a command to us?
On the first and the 7th day, this is how we are to regard it. It is a set apart time. We'll answer that in a little bit when it comes to how we observe and keep the appointed times. All right, now I just want to focus on the timing that He gives us. All right, but good question. Very clearly here He said on the 1st and 7th day it is to be a holy convocation, don't do any sort of work. All right, that was a command that was given at this point in time. Okay. The Moedim, typically the 7 appointed times, all right, are usually split up into these 2 categories, the spring feasts, or the spring times, and then the fall appointed times. And what we just read about here included the 14th day of the first month. That's when the Passover meal would be had, okay? For 7 days, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you are to eat unleavened bread and not take any bread with leaven in it, okay?
Including rice? Maybe?
We'll talk about that later. First fruits, all right? First fruits is a time that happens where the priest waves an offering after the weekly Shabbat, okay, during the week of unleavened bread. Okay. You guys remember this, yes? Any questions about these feasts in the springtime? Okay, so we know that it starts the 14th of the first month. That's when the meal is had. And then the 7 days of unleavened bread. And during that time, first fruits falls during that week, sometime during the week of unleavened bread. Pentecost comes 50 days after the waving of first fruits, okay? There is a holiday, I guess, that's coming up next month. Do you guys know this one?
Yes.
Yeah?
It's
Easter?
on the table already.
Yeah, there's a table back here that has, so when we look at this holiday, we always hear about Good Friday, the day that Jesus died, supposedly. And then we have Easter Sunday, Resurrection Sunday, right? And that's the big hoopla. This is a time that you would find most Christians around the world flocking to their churches when they don't go to church the rest of the year. All right? Yeah, this is the most highly attended church service across the globe for Christians. All right? Easter Sunday. Well, to them it's the globe. Yeah.
The disc.
All right? Across the world. Easter Sunday. And this is notorious for all the Christians who have made Sunday the day of worship to be observed. Okay? Let's keep that in mind as we move forward. Here's a calendar, the Gregorian calendar that we're all familiar with. March. Oh, you can't see it. Okay, so there's March. Here's March. The new moon this month, when the moon is empty, it falls at the end of the month, the evening of the 29th. Okay? The first day of the month of Nisan would be this Sunday, the 30th. Alright, so if you look at that, that would be the first of Nisan, okay, March 30th. And let's see how we calculate getting to the 14th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 is when the Passover meal would be had. The first day of unleavened bread would be that Sunday. Okay? And it runs for 7 days. Okay? And then...
Mercedes Hedges.
Yeah, right, Mercedes. Yeah, he's right on point, buddy. Good. Alright, so there, after the Shabbat, this is when the first fruits wave offering is given. It's always going to be on the first day of the week, a Sunday. Okay? Biblically, people have asked me, what calendar do you follow? Do you follow the Hillel calendar, the Zadok calendar? Do you follow only the Gregorian calendar? All right. I don't follow any of those Hillel or Zadokite or Enochian calendars. I don't follow any of them. All right. They all kind of have variations and differences between them. But when we read through the scriptures, okay, we can pinpoint how to follow God's appointed times and calculate those times. I got confused before because I would see Shavuot or Pentecost fall on a Wednesday. And I'm like, how does it fall on a Wednesday? If we count 50 days from first fruits, okay, how many days are there in a week? 7. All right. How many 7s fit into 50? 7. What's 7 times 7? 49. So if you start counting on a Sunday, 49 days, you end on a Saturday, a Shabbat, right? So then Pentecost, being the 50th day, or Shavuot, will always fall on what day of the week? Sunday. You had 49 days plus 1. And you're supposed to count those 50 days to get to that next appointed time. That appointed time, you don't look at the sky to determine what day of the month it is. Okay? You do it based on the waving of the first fruits. Okay? So if you look back, God gave us the instructions of how to calculate that time. The 14th day of the first month, eat the meal. For 7 days after that, eat unleavened bread. During that week, after the Shabbat that falls on that week, that's when the first fruits wave offering happens. From the first fruits wave offering, you are to watch and count 50 days. On the 50th day is the next appointed time. There's a responsibility on our part not to just check the calendar to tell us what day it is. How do we know when the first month is? Well, the first month, Aviv. It falls during the springtime. All right? You know the moon during February and the moon during March, what the date that it brings you to, that new moon in February is cold. It is still dead winter. All right? The new moon in March might be a little chilly, but you can see the signs of spring coming about. All right? So you know that's the spring season, and you look for the first new moon that occurs after the spring equinox.
That's what you get for the...
What is the spring equinox? It's that one day of the year where the daylight hours and the nighttime hours are complete 12-hour, they're complete, 12 hours night, 12 hours day. That's the spring equinox. Okay? That's what they call it, spring equinox. But that's the change of the season into spring. So the first day of the month, for the first month, will fall during that season, after the equal daylight hours. Interesting that the reckoning of the season change happens as well with the lights of the sky. Starting to make sense? Do you see why it might be important that that's what we're studying today? It's not just me picking at things. This is about the Lord's appointed times and the clock that He gave us in order to keep those times. People will say, oh, well, it sounds like you're following the Hillel calendar because it's different from whatever I'm following. I don't follow the Hillel calendar because that's the one where they count Shavuot differently. Their first fruits doesn't always fall on the day after Shabbat. It's a later developed calendar. I'm not getting into this heavily today. Because this is a whole couple classes on its own. I love this study. The death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua. All right? When did it happen? When did Jesus die on the cross? Well, when did Yeshua die on the cross? When did the modern day Christian Jesus die on the cross?
Friday.
The modern day Christian Jesus died on a Friday. The modern day Christian Jesus rose on Sunday.
Makes sense.
Is anybody confused yet?
Yeah.
You're not. She's speaking for some people. In case you haven't heard it before, okay? There's a distinction. And I phrase it that way not to be arrogant or anything, but there's a difference between the way we understand Christianity today and what happened at the death and resurrection of Yeshua than what we've been taught and what we've subscribed to for so long. Okay? Understanding the Hebrew reckoning of days, understanding the Hebrew timekeeping, and this is, you know what, guys, take a picture. It's not going to be the greatest. I'm going to send it to you guys. There's verses at the bottom of this slide as well that correspond with those little dots. Okay? And see those numbers? There are verses that will show you through the different gospel writings about how this reckoning comes about. It's a fuller context, taking all things into consideration, not only one account from one of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they seem to be agreeing a little bit more, but they weren't as concerned with the Hebraic timekeeping as, say, the writer John cared about it. John wanted to bring about more who the person of Yeshua, the Jewish Messiah, was. So of course he's writing, keeping that Hebraic context very much at the front of his mind in his writings. Mark, Luke, and John, they report on certain things, but not as much concerned with keeping that Hebraic perspective in view and the Jewishness of Messiah. Question: was Jesus a Christian?
No.
Did he become a Christian after he rose from the grave? But he was called Jesus Christ. Yeshua he was Jewish. All right, he was Jewish. He would be in the grave 3 days, 3 nights, just like Jonah was in the whale 3 days and 3 nights, right? Being in the grave. And this is just a very quick one. The day of preparation, the 14th of Nisan that year, fell on a Wednesday, middle of the week. All right? He had his Last Supper at the beginning of the 14th of Nisan. People say, wait, so did he actually have the Passover meal? I thought Passover meal had to happen at the end of the day of the 14th. Right? The lamb would be slaughtered on preparation day, typically on the 14th. Right? And then eaten right at twilight. At twilight. Remember the reckoning of the times. It still happened between sunset to sunset. Yeshua had his meal between sunset and sunset on the 14th, still in keeping with the command. We always thought, oh, well, you have to eat the lamb after sunset. Well, that's what we're thinking about. But remember, the reckoning of time was a window of time. And it said at twilight, be in your homes, and you have the meal at twilight. Remember, twilight is still part of the reckoning of the end of that third portion of the day, leading into the first watch of the night. Make sense? So that takes care of some of the discrepancy where people are fighting and saying, well, the day of preparation, people think day of preparation is only Friday, preparation day for the Sabbath. But remember, the first day of unleavened bread, the 15th of Nisan, was also a day of holy convocation, a time set apart where you are to do no work. It was also a day of rest. So preparation day for the Passover week, unleavened bread. John writes about it as the preparation day for the Passover, not preparation day for Shabbat. Okay? But people will say, oh, but Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they disagree. So let's go with the majority. Because they don't specifically say preparation of Pesach. They just say the preparation day is when he died. So they see that and they say, oh, preparation day, that's Friday. So he died on Friday. You see how we got there? And you're probably wondering, okay, Tim, well, that's great, but what does it matter? He still died and rose, right? I'm like, oh, but it does matter. And I'll tell you why. There's also some warnings about times being changed. They will try to change the times and the seasons to obscure us knowing these appointed times of God. Isn't it the enemy's whole purpose to distract us from being focused on God? He wants us to be distracted, look elsewhere, and stop observing his appointed times. So much so that Christians today don't observe Shabbat at all anymore. When we look back to Leviticus 23, in this whole Moedim passage, the very first thing that is mentioned is found here in verse 3. Work is to be done on 6 days, but the seventh day is a Shabbat of complete rest. a holy convocation. You are not to do any kind of work. It is a Shabbat for Yehovah, even in your homes. Okay? Even in your home. So the very first part of his appointed times that he speaks about is a weekly Shabbat, the seventh day of the week, to do no work. Not only work outside, it says even in your homes. Okay. No matter what calendar you observe, no matter if it's a Sumerian calendar, okay, or the Gregorian calendar, how many days are there in a week? 7 days a week. No matter what calendar you use, no matter how many times that calendar has changed, it will always follow a 7-day cycle. It doesn't matter whether you measure a month by observing the moon or just by counting numbers on a page. It always follows a 7-day cycle that has never been broken, whether you are a believer or not. All right? Still following a 7-day cycle that God ordained. There's something about that that cannot be broken or rewritten anyway. Okay? Doesn't matter if you decide to start observing your Sabbath, another day, a day of rest, another day. That is not the day that Yehovah had instituted as his Shabbat for mankind. Okay?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What if a person is like a business person, they're a traveler? So, how does that work? Just wondering. Like a business person.
Going across time zones and such.
So,
Reckoning of time, the day would still be the same no matter where you are. It might shift a few hours here and there, but the days themselves are set.
okay.
And how we reckon the day also
yeah.
matters, right?
All right, yeah.
Remember, once again, it's not down to the precise minute, hour, or second.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
But Yehovah spoke to us using days, and then that's why the moon is there, to tell us the days,
Oh, all right, thank you.
right? And the months with the stars, right?
Oh, thank you.
The sun is there to help us gauge throughout the day the part of the day, right? Back then, each day would be counted as like first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, using the number for the day. It's not Monday, Tuesday, it didn't have a name. It would just be called the first day of the week, second day of the week, okay? But Shabbat was the only day of the week that had a special name designation. It was called Shabbat. Okay? Exodus 31, verse 13, 16, and 17. Tell the people of Israel, you are to observe my Shabbats, for this is a sign between me and you through all your generations, so that you will know that I am Yehovah, who sets you apart for me. That's verse 13. The people of Israel are to keep the Shabbats, to observe Shabbat through all their generations as a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the people of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yehovah made heaven and earth, but on the 7th day he stopped working and rested. Clear, right? It's a sign. Okay? More than it is a command, it's a sign. A sign of the covenant between God and his people, Israel. And you're like, you probably heard people say, well, this was written in the Old Testament. This is the Torah. This is only the law of Moses. This is only for the Israelites, and I'm not an Israelite. So I'm not bound to keep this Sabbath of his. And people are still hanging on to the promises of God. And they're hanging on to their version of Jesus Christ that's going to save them, by denying the covenants that were made. They're not understanding this covenant relationship with God. They're not understanding how God instituted these covenants and who he made the covenants with. How many of you want to spend your life with Yehovah when this earth passes away? Yeah? Do you believe that he's coming back? Do you believe that he's a faithful God to his promises? More than a promise, he writes it out as a covenant. Okay? A covenant cannot be changed. It could be added to and clarified a little bit more. It could be narrowed down by adding more to it, but it could never be rewritten or changed. That's a covenant. Promises could be broken and you say, I'm sorry, and you get on with life, but our God isn't fleeting like that. He never changes. And he never goes back on his word. Okay? So the covenants that he makes, they all still stand. And the covenant that allows us as believers today on this side of the cross, that we hang on to in the hope that he'll come back for us, guess what? Who did he make that covenant with? Israel. We do not become Israelites when we believe. But we get to partake of those promises, the covenant that was made with Israel. Okay? We are considered as part of the house of Israel. Alright? Because that's who God has his blessing on. I have some other images that'll help us understand that a little bit better in a second. But it's a perpetual covenant. Alright? As believers, when you start to come to the truth of what Yeshua is teaching, when you start to see that he is the Jewish Messiah, alright, that brings the covenants made from God with Israel and allows that promise to be open to Gentile believers as well, we start to understand a little bit more why it's important that we look to this Old Testament, that we look to the Holy Scriptures. So I grew up in a church that has at its forefront a very strong emphasis on the Sabbath day, the seventh day. All right, the church I grew up in is called the Seventh-day Adventist Church. That was the denomination, a Christian denomination that observes Shabbat similarly to the Jews from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday, the seventh-day Sabbath. Okay, and something that there's some misunderstanding about the way that they communicate something when they talk about the Catholic Church. Changing Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. You can't change Sabbath from Saturday that God instituted as the day. You can't change it to Sunday because one is the seventh day and one is the first day. Sabbath is always the seventh day. Doesn't change. You could take your day of rest any day of the week. It doesn't make it Shabbat. What God says is. And we can't change that. What God says is holy and set apart, it's holy because he says it's holy. Just like certain animals are considered clean, while other animals are considered unclean. The designation is there simply because God said so and declared it to be that way. We can't change that. You could disagree with him, you could do things differently, but it doesn't change what God instituted. Yes? But the Seventh-day Adventists love to say, oh, well, those guys, they changed the Sabbath to Sunday. That's giving them way too much credit. They changed the day of worship and gathering to be observed on the first day of the week. The observance of the day. Okay? Interestingly enough, did you know, throughout the scriptures, Shabbat is not painted as a day of worship. It is a day of rest. Sadly enough, the church I came from, not to dog them, they were doing the best they could with what they did when they became a denomination. They were trying to go back to what the scriptures were saying. They were trying to go back from Sunday observance and bring back the Lord's Shabbat. I think it was a noble thing to do. But it became their identity that this is who we are, and this is how we are different from those Sunday worshiping other Christians. We're better because we're keeping God's laws. You know, like almost. It came across that way.
Yeah.
That's what it became decades later. Okay? So they revere Shabbat so much, and they make Shabbat about being the day of worship, where everybody has to come to church and spend the entire day there so you don't do anything out in the world for some congregations. And then they will judge those that go to church on Sunday and say, look, they don't even observe the whole day. They only go to church service and then they do whatever they want to do, as though they're supposed to observe Sunday the way we observe Shabbat. Yeah.
I was younger. My mom used to say, you don't have 1 hour to give to God, right? Like one Sunday, just 1 hour.
She tries to guilt you on Sunday to go to church.
But just 1 hour, just 1 hour. You know, 1 hour. And they're guilty 1 hour, and then it's actually
Do whatever you want.
yeah. You're good already just 1 hour.
Pay your duty.
Yeah, you know
Yeah.
for the whole week.
Only 1 hour you have to go to church.
There's no injunction to go to bring your body to a building called the church building.
Yeah. There is one thing that is written about Shabbat, though. It did say it is a holy convocation. It is one, it's a time set apart, 7th day of the week set apart. Don't do any work, ordinary common work, okay? And it said even in your homes. Here's the thing, the holy convocation, it is about a gathering. It is still about being with God's people. You could be at home with your small group. You could be at home with your family. Okay? The day of worship isn't going to church. If anything, worship was central to the life of the Israelites. There were daily sacrifices, daily rituals, daily things going on in the temple. It never paused. Worship is meant to be an everyday. It's our way of life. Okay? How dare we take worship to be one day of the week? How dare we? Because we did. We did.
1 hour.
We treated that day as 1 hour.
It's worse. At least it's 1 hour.
We do it 1.5.
All right, very quickly. How did the church get there? How did we get from shifting our focus from Shabbat, all right, to Sunday? Okay. Now this is just a story of the conversion of Constantine. We'll read it. Okay. Constantine was the first so-called Christian emperor of the Roman Empire. This is his conversion story. He was marching forth to fight the battle of Milvian Bridge when he had some kind of vision and saw a flaming cross in the sky. Underneath the cross were the Latin words meaning, "In this sign conquer." He took this as an omen that he should be Christian, and his army as well. He declared all his pagan soldiers to be Christians, and they became very zealous to build up the power and prestige of the church. Through his influence, great flocks of pagans were taken into Christian ranks, but they were still pagan at heart and brought much of the paraphernalia of sun worship to which they continued to be devoted. Okay? Many other customs were Christianized and appropriated into church practice. Remember we talked about syncretism in the past, yeah? You take a certain worldview and you bring it in and blend it together with another worldview, and out comes this new view. Okay? And this is what happened here. I don't want to dog whatever's happening back here, but I look here on this table, and it's got like Easter eggs and other little things. It looks cultural, fresh garlic and other coins, spices. You know, even in Filipino New Year. Filipino New Year, you eat noodles, round, any round food. All right, so The egg is round and it's the wholeness, the fullness of the noodles, I think,
That's why we
for
always get
longevity.
coins, not paper bills.
And coins, round coins instead of paper bills. So there are these different cultural superstitions or cultural practices that are blended in with things like
Middle cut, right?
Easter or the Spring New Year, okay? A form of syncretism. How many of you grew up in a Christian household? Christian Catholic household? Yeah? How many of you went to Easter on the weekend? Easter service? Yeah? How many of you saw Easter eggs and bunny rabbits?
Not much.
Not necessarily at church, but growing up.
No.
During that time that's called Easter, it's everywhere. If you didn't see it, you got blind. It's in every window.
If you're rich, you're gonna go with the Easter egg. But if you're poor, no Easter egg.
The only thing I like about the Easter egg was chocolate.
For the rich,
You say balloon?
Oh, that's me.
hello.
I don't want it.
But you see how easily it is to take these things, we're so used to these traditions, these practices, or cultural practices, and blend it together with what is supposed to be holy and set apart and sacred. The paraphernalia of sun worship. You notice a lot of the imagery that we see from churches, the stained glass windows and everything else. You see that halo, that sun behind the head of everybody, all the different saints, all the different people. And it's just sun worship, and it's there, it's central. You know, these things existed prior to the foundation of the Christian church. There was already sun worship happening everywhere. But when Constantine and his friends come along and all these pagans infiltrated the church and brought all their sun worship practice, they just gave different names to these images. They would use the old statues and say, oh no, that's Peter, James, and John, you know. Well, these are the different saints. But they still had that sun behind them. And their gestures, their hand signals and everything else on the statues and in the artwork, these are actually pagan symbols giving homage to pagan deities. As above, so below, and all that other stuff. And Ishtar. Sun worship. The cult of Mithraism, or sun worship, was the official religion of the Roman Empire. Okay? It stood as the greatest competitor to the new Christian religion. It had its own organization, temples, priesthood, robes, everything. It also had an official day on which to pay special homage that was given to the sun. The venerable day of the sun, the first day of the week. We call it Sunday. Hello. That's how we got it. When Constantine pressed his pagan hordes into the church, they were observing the day of the sun for their adoration of the sun god. It was their special holy day. In order to make it more convenient for them to make the change to the new religion, Constantine accepted their day of worship, Sunday, instead of the scriptural Sabbath, which had been observed by Yeshua and his disciples. So when we talk about what is called the early Christian church, or the followers of Yeshua, they were still observing the seventh-day Shabbat. And then after Constantine, well, let's compromise a little so that we get along with these people and we can have this religion together. They weren't even trying to make a new religion. They were just trying to appease people so that they could make more people Christian like they were. Make sense? It's a simple, honest, it seemed like good intention, right? It didn't seem like such a bad thing, but it shows ignorance. He had no idea of the Hebrew Scriptures. He didn't understand this Hebrew God. He didn't understand what was written. But he joined, he wanted to believe. Maybe he did believe in what happened with Yeshua. You know, poor Constantine, because what he ushered in led so many people astray.
I think it's interesting on this side of all that, Christians are now taking the stance of, oh, well, everything is everything. Like, even if you're Hindu, even if you're Buddhist, it's all the same thing. So it's just relabeled. They understand and believe the same thing. It's all the same God. God said, set apart.
Yep.
Don't do what they do. We can't just say, oh, well, it's the same thing, because it's not. He set himself apart from all those other gods. He was not a polytheistic God. He didn't tell them to do all this stuff.
Yep.
This was taken, added to his way, or meant to usurp his way. So
Yep.
when we take this Christian modern mentality of, oh, well, it's all the same thing, it doesn't matter. We're already violating his first commandment. Who am I?
Yeah.
I'm set apart. Do not clump me with these other gods.
Yeah.
I'm different.
Some historians say that what prompted Constantine to do this was that his hold on his empire was weakening.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to come up with something
That's right.
that would unify his very fragmented
His
empire.
empire, yeah.
And he did it through religion.
Absolutely.
Different today.
It's funny that in his vision that he saw, this apparently he had this sort of vision, the flaming cross in the sky, and under were Latin words, meaning in this sign conquer. You know Latin? Latin is a dead language.
You could say that of Hebrew.
Was it? It was not in use at all? Why would Latin be used for this Hebrew Messiah? And why is it the cross? The execution stake. Being raised as Christians, we say there's nothing wrong with that. The cross is the cross. No, we love the cross. We love the cross. It's like saying, I love the electric chair. Electric chair?
Yeah.
Yeah, the execution.
Or the hypodermic needle.
Right? The cross is death. The cross was a symbol that was used for centuries in pagan worship. When I say pagan, it doesn't mean evil. It just means not of God, not of Hebraic origin. That's what pagan is, okay? So it had nothing to do with the Hebrew worship, the cross. There are some coincidences that we see along the way where God would include these pagan worshipers to come and be part of. So he would still speak their language using symbols that they understood, but it was never his symbol. But the pagans love that symbol. So we continue to use the symbol of the cross all the time. That has become a form of idolatry already. Where the cross no longer symbolized Jesus, it symbolized my Christianity. It symbolized my religion. It shows that I'm set apart from other people. I wear the cross, not seats. Right? Why are you wearing those seats? Are you Jewish or something?
That's what everybody thinks.
That's what everybody thinks, right?
At my work, because I'm like mostly Catholics, every time they see this, they think I'm Jewish.
And they're like,
Yeah.
where's your crucifix?
Yeah.
Yeah. All of this, I just want to bring this up. We're getting close to the end of our study. Replacement theology. How many of you have heard of replacement theology? Or supersessionism? Replacement theology, it's like out with the old, in with the new. We're the new force in town and the old guys, they're out. That's like saying, well, the Jews messed up, they killed Jesus, and Jesus came back to life, and I believe in him, so down with the Jews, I'm a Christian. Forget about everything Jewish. Everything has to be viewed through my Christian lens. Replacement theology. They messed up like we didn't mess up. What is it?
We're the new spiritual Israel.
We're the new spiritual Israel to replace any other Israel that existed before. That's what replacement theology is. What is it and why is it wrong? You know, there are people that use the argument, we don't have to keep the Sabbath anymore, right? I heard we don't physically keep Sabbath anymore because Messiah is our rest. Now we now rest in him. So they say we don't have to worry about the seventh day anymore because Yeshua is our rest. While he is our rest, yes, that's true. But that's like saying he's also the bread of life. He said he was the bread of life, right? Does this mean we stop eating physical food and eat in him? It's ridiculous. Using that same logic, it's ridiculous to say, oh, he's the bread of life, so I don't have to eat physical bread anymore. And they say, well, he's my rest, so I don't have to keep Shabbat anymore. You don't have to do anything. It's better for you to continue eating food. It's also better for you if you continue to observe Shabbat. It's just better for you. You don't have to do anything. It's not like you're going to lose your salvation. But remember, what was Shabbat meant to be? A perpetual sign of that covenant between Jehovah and his people. Are you part of his people? Yes? How would we know? Without that sign. Not here to guilt anybody. Not here to make things more difficult for anybody. But friends, it was in the scriptures, it was written there. God has a purpose for it. It might not make sense to us in our situations. We think, but if I don't want to lose my job, I have to work on Saturday. You don't have to do anything. Nobody makes you do anything. God gave you the freedom to choose whether you're going to align with his ways and walk the way that he says. It's your choice. I think one of the things that keeps us from following his ways is fear or doubt. Fear of what others might do to us. Fear of what might happen to us if we don't do things the way somebody else wants. What about, don't you care about if you don't do things the way God wants? But I might lose my job. So, maybe that's not the job you're supposed to be at. But how will I provide for my family? Are you the one providing for your family? Or does God provide you with breath every day? And a skill set and abilities? God provides our every need. Fear God, nobody else. Are you hearing me, friends? This is something we need to work out with God. I know it's a struggle, but we got to talk about this. We got to talk about this. Because if we start compromising one little thing like Sabbath keeping, look at what happened when Constantine compromised a little bit. Whoa, something's angry. I'm telling you.
I was saying about, the 1 hour, because if we like lose that 1 hour, we think, oh, it's just 1 hour. We think, like I used to think, oh, it's just 1 hour. So I would get used to losing that 1 hour, right? So it says, give me just a little thing, and
Messes things up, right?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking about with this one. You just let it go, and then it's gonna mess
Compromise
things up.
a little bit?
Compromise a little bit.
It seems like small little things that we don't really think will affect anything.
Yes, you lose the value. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Lose the value.
So back to replacement theology, this is kind of what it looks like. You have Israel, right? And a remnant of Israel in the center, all right? That were still adhering to the ways of Jehovah, okay? And it's like replacement theology is taking those people that are still following and taking them outside of Israel, and that's now the church. It's separate from Israel. And it's like leaving everything else behind and saying, no, you know what? That first believers in Yeshua, they were the remnant of Israel. Okay? They were following Yeshua. And then they became the church, and they left Israel. They were no longer Israelites, right? They were no longer Jewish now, they're saying. They became Christian. The church, as we know it today. The covenants and promises given to Israel, they say, are transferred to this new Gentile church that exists today. they messed up, so they don't get any of the promises that God gave them. That's only for us now who believe in this new belief system of the Gentile church. If Jews want to be saved, then they need to convert to our Gentile Christianity. That's replacement theology. Apart from Israel. The covenants that are made with Israel, you only benefit if you come out here, out of Israel. It doesn't make sense. The remnant theology is where all believers, right, where the Gentile church, people outside of Israel, okay, get to partake of the covenants that were made with Israel, between God and Israel. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but I think the graphic might help a few people here. Okay? Gentile Christians must identify with remnant Israel. But no, they're Jews. I'm a Christian. How can I identify with them? There's no way. You mean, do I need to start wearing seats and everything else? You don't have to do anything. Okay? But it starts with our identity. Is your identity in Yeshua and what he promised? Is it found in the work that he did? Because you know what? He was upholding all the covenants that were made with Israel. He came on his father's behalf to uphold all those covenants that his father made. He didn't come here to obliterate his father's will and his word. He came to fulfill it all. And he came to expand it and bring it, offer it to other people that didn't have a way in before.
Replacement theology is what's being taught in a lot of seminaries, a lot of Christian schools,
Yep.
and the pastors and ministers coming out from all these denominational teaching schools teach replacement theology. What they fail to emphasize is that the covenants of Jehovah were perpetual. And it is only our privilege as Gentile Christians to partake of those covenants and promises given to Israel.
That's right. And initially through Abraham. And the promise made to Abraham that the nations will be blessed through you.
Through you.
Right?
Through it.
He was Hebrew before there were any Israelites. But still his people. Okay? And surely enough, God's promise to Abraham was made clear. Because we all get to partake of that, friends. All right? We who are not natural-born Israelites. We who start to believe in Yeshua and everything that he's teaching.
If we don't believe that Jehovah's words, that his promises and covenants are perpetual, we make him a liar.
That's right. Absolutely. So question, just to make sure we're clear. Has the church replaced Israel?
No.
I heard one no. I see a few heads
No.
shaking. Are you sure of it?
Absolutely not.
Has the church replaced Israel? No? Some of
It's
us,
Israel.
the church Israel? Is
The church
Israel?
is Israel.
Yeah, the true church, I guess. The modern day church as we see it today, the Christian church as we call it, has not replaced Israel. All right? All who come to believe are grafted in to the covenants made with Israel. Okay? This is your homework. If you haven't gone through it, or maybe you've gone through it and you need fresh eyes to read it again, I want you to read through Romans chapters 9, 10, 11. Okay? This debunks the replacement theology that we're being taught in our seminaries and our workshops and everything else. Okay? This isn't from the scriptures. The scriptures is the Old Testament. This is New Testament writings. So even those people today that call themselves, I'm a New Testament Christian, ask them, have you read Romans 9, 10, and 11? Right? God's sovereign purpose, grafting people in to his people that he called Israel. Remnant Israel. That's our homework, friends. And just like my dad said earlier, the whole matter of it all is, can God be trusted? Because if he goes back on his word and his covenants and breaks any of that, he's a liar. How can you trust a liar? If we believe things the way that the modern Christian church is teaching things, we make God be a liar. Because we're saying, no, he changed his mind. He went back on his covenants, now that's for us. He's not staying true to the Israelites. He's not staying true to Israel. You just made him a liar, and then you're believing in a God that lies. Oh, it feels so black and white when I'm saying it, and it feels like it's wrong what I'm saying. I know it's not. Could it be said better? Probably. But I'm not here to make people feel like, oh, it's okay that you're still compromising. No, stop compromising. It's not okay anymore, guys. All right? Was this helpful today at all? Anybody? Yeah? Okay, helped us understand why this matters. We're going to be looking at that study here at another classroom session. All right? The death, burial, and resurrection. It's more than a timeline, but it is about why is it important that we understand what actually happened here this week? And how that varies from what we've been indoctrinated by in the Christian church today with Easter, Good Friday and Easter Sunday. All right? There's so much more to it, guys. So much that we've missed. His Moedim are so important. And I end on this slide here. God can be trusted. He can be trusted because he has never gone back on his word. He has been faithful to his promises. He has fulfilled the prophecies written in Scripture through his son Yeshua. So much has happened. There's still more prophecy that is needing to be fulfilled. We're still waiting for the culmination of these things. All right? And all of this started the time in the sky on the fourth day of creation. Right? This is where he invites us into this special time, observing these times. His weekly Shabbat and his Moedim, okay? His appointed times. Passover or Pesach, it represents a moment that he returns and resurrects us, and his wrath passes over us as he descended to battle the wicked. Unleavened bread, it represents a sinless body as we will receive as the wicked are removed from the earth. First fruits represents the harvest of souls that takes place at the first resurrection. Pentecost represents us fully receiving his Spirit upon resurrection, being born again of water and Spirit. Trumpets represents his return to the sound of trumpets and us being resurrected at that last trumpet. Atonement represents the final and complete forgiveness of our sins as we receive new bodies that will be incapable of sin. And tabernacles represents him dwelling with us on earth after we are resurrected and brought into the new Jerusalem. Okay? So we're going to have more studies on the Moedim. Why are we talking about it now? Well, because next Shabbat is going to be the beginning of the biblical New Year, that evening. Okay? The evening next Shabbat is the beginning of the biblical New Year. So at sunset, feel free to blow a shofar, welcome in the new year, whatever it is, okay? Spend the time in worship and ask God to guide us into the truth of his Moedim, okay? Ask us to guide us in how he wants us to observe things today, all right? And ask God to just let his Spirit be the one guiding you in his truth. He promised that that's what it is, what he would do, all right? You don't have to learn from me. I'm just a guy sharing the things that I've come to, all right? I feel it's important to share these things and be conversant about it, but it's Jehovah and his Spirit that's going to guide you into this truth, okay? May the grace of our Lord Yeshua and the shalom of Jehovah our Father be with us all. Amen.